Hello everyone, welcome to my first build video. We're going to talk about a two-handed stamina sorcerer build. I came across this build by accident, but it seems to be pretty powerful. Its AoE damage and single target damage is both pretty strong. The only minus point might be the sustain of resources, but if you're in a raid group where the healers are doing their job properly, you should be good. I also want to mention Drayzon has been helping me with perfecting the build, so he should also get a bit of the credit. Dre's great with making builds and might make his own video about this build. I'll link his channel down below in the description so anyone can check him out too. Alright, let's start. We're going to start with the gear setup. For your chest, gloves, belt, legs and shoes, you should be wearing the perfect arms of Relequen Set. This should be your main set and all of the traits should be in divines. The set does up to 7k pure DPS just for having it on and doing simple light and heavy attacks between your skills. It might be hard to farm the perfect arms of Relequen Set because you need to complete veteran Cloud Rest +1 for the armor pieces. However, this set is not extremely different than the imperfect arms of Relequen Set. So the imperfect or normal, however you want to call it, arms of Relequen Set can be farmed in even normal Cloud Rest. You want all pieces to have the divine trait, but it's not a big of a deal if one or two of the pieces have an infused or well-fitted trait. The only thing that might complicate farming this set is that you need the Somerset chapter to enter Cloud Rest, so keep that in mind. As you can see, I have the full perfect Relequen Set, but 3 of the pieces are infused, while my normal Relequen Set is fully divines. In this case, it might actually be bad to stick to the normal Relequen Set, because else you will be missing out a large bonus from your Mundus Stone. For the players who do not own the Somerset chapter, can always farm the Two-Fanged Serpent Set, which gives a lot of penetration and thus a help in DPS. I would still recommend getting Relequen, but it's a good replacement for when you can't get or don't have Relequen. So when it comes to the monster sets you can use for this build, there are 3 options and I'll introduce them in order of what's best, second best and third best. Remember, all monster helmets can be farmed in veteran group dungeons, and the monster shoulders can be obtained by turning in undaunted keys. You want the monster head to be a heavy piece, and the monster shoulder to be a medium armor piece. The heavy head gives the extra bit of defense, HP and health regeneration. Having 6 medium pieces will give you stamina and stamina regen. Both monster set pieces should have the divine trait, but having 1 infused or well-fitted trait won't be much of a problem. I'll link the monster sets down below in the description. So the best monster set for this build would be Stormfist. It's generally good all around for solo and group damage, especially for a Stumsork. Now I don't use this monster set for my DPS tests since I don't have the correct traits on it and rather have a monster set which does have the correct traits. The Stormfist head is farmable in Veteran Tempest Island. The second best monster set is Velidreth. This monster set has actually got the best AoE damage of all because it has a wider arc and hits harder than Stormfist does. So in a big mob group you want to use this over Stormfist. It's a good set to have. The Velidreth head might be a bit harder to farm since it's farmable in Veteran Kra'gh Shadow, which is a DLC dungeon and might be a bit tricky to complete for less experienced players. The third best monster set is Kra'gh. I personally don't have any Kra'ghs to show, but I'll put a link down below in the description. Kra'gh gives the best results with less penetration debuffs, and it has alright DPS with about 1.5k on average. It's nowhere near as good as the other monster sets are, but Kra'gh head is the easiest monster head to farm and is farmable in Veteran Fungal Grotto 1. Right, for your main weapon and jewelry, you want to get the Berserking Warrior set, also known as Advancing Yokeda. Overall, this gives a lot of weapon critical and increases your critical strike rating, which will overall improve your DPS. The jewelry should all get a weapon damage glyph, the rings should have the Bloodthirsty trait, and the necklace should come in infused. This is because at execute you will do a little bit more of DPS, but the infused necklace will overall give you extra damage. Your main weapon should be a two-handed axe. The two-handed axe is better than the mace or sword because it gives the bleed damage option. That's about 2k extra DPS. And overall the damage of the axe is also higher than that of a mace or sword. However, if you only have a two-handed mace or sword, feel free to use that as a replacement until you've farmed the axe. Your backbar weapon should have a Thunderous Volley set, also known as a Maelstrom bow. This is because one of your most powerful skills is Endless Hell, and with the Maelstrom bow it becomes even more powerful. The Maelstrom bow can be farmed in Veteran Maelstrom Arena. If you don't have a Maelstrom bow, you can use a Master's bow, which can be farmed in Veteran Dragonstar Arena. This arena is easier to farm compared to the Maelstrom Arena. Your weapon should have the infused trait, because that will make the enchantment 30% more powerful, but also reduce the cooldown by 50%. Alright, we're going to talk about these skills. Now it's important about the passives that in the Sword skill line, you will see that not all of the passives are useful for stamina builds. Some might not be useful, so just read them through, and you don't need all of them. I'll talk about the passives first. On my front and back bar, number 5, I use Bound Armaments. This one gives me increased stamina, and my light attacks will cause more damage just for having it slotted. So it's a nice one to have. On my front bar I also use Flawless Dawnbreaker because while slotted, my weapon damage is increased by 5%, which is a lot. I only use the bow ultimate as an ult, and the one from the Fighters Guild is just a passive. So if I start a DPS rotation, I always start with Hurricane. This is a buff, I want that one up. It helps me gain more resistance, it increases my speed, but it also gives me a bit more physical damage. So overall a nice buff to keep up. You can start that before your DPS run. Then I put down Endless Hell. Remember that this is your most powerful attack, and it's not even a single target attack, it's also an AoE. So you want to keep that one up all the time. Afterwards I use Caldrops, which is also a strong AoE. I use Rearming Traps, and then I use Ballista. In between all the attacks you want to use light attacks, so don't forget to do that. At the end I use Poison Injection, and then I swap to my front bar again. I use Brawler as a debuff on the targets, and while my buffs are running, I spam Wrecking Blow, Light Attack, Wrecking Blow, Light Attack until one of the buffs needs to refresh, and then I go back on my back bar to do the rotation again. Now I use Executioner on my 4th skill, my front bar. You could also be using the other morph of it, because that won't give more damage to mobs in the area. Or you could use Rally, but for this setup I'd rather use Executioner. When your target hits less than 50%, you want to continue your rotation, but stop doing Wrecking Blow and do Executioner in between your rotation. Then when the boss is at like 40%, you want to only use Executioner, but still keep the Caldrops and Endless Hell up. At around 10% you do your last skill drops and Endless Hell and the ultimate, and you just light attack Executioner all the time. That's how my rotation goes. Now for my champion points, I think that is also a bit of a personal setup. Now the red tree really depends on the kind of trial you are in. I'll use a general setup, but for each trial you can use a different red tree setup. So just search a tutorial for that, and yeah. For the green tree, it's important to have 75 into Mooncalf and 75 into Tenacity for the recovery and for your resources. While the rest of the green tree is really based on your personal preference. When either you sprint a lot, roll dodge a lot, break free a lot, bash a lot, you should really look at your personal preference. Now the blue tree is a bit important, but you can also variate a bit between that. So I use 40 into Master at Arms, 66 into Thaumaturge, 46 into Precise Strikes, 64 into Mighty, and 44 into Piercing. If you're using Twice-Fanged Snake, which gives you more penetration, then you don't need to use as much into Piercing, and you can use it in Master at Arms or into any of the other. But these are kind of the 4 or 5 you should experiment with, and this works for me at the moment, but you might want to experiment what works for you. Now for supplies and utilities, you want to go for the Essence of Weapon Power. This is the most common stamina endgame potion. It gives extra weapon damage, critical chance, and it restores stamina. So it's a good one to have. Well, I use lava food soup and salt rice during my DPS test. You might want to go for Dubious Cameron Throne during raids. The blue regen food I use is very useful during DPS tests because you might not always have a healer by your side spamming orbs. The purple stat food gives enough stamina recovery, max stun, and max health. Your health will be around 16k, but in a raid with a warden in the group and someone wearing an even set, you should have about 20k health, which is enough in any trial. When it comes to your Mundus, you want to choose between the Lover and the Warrior. The Lover gives extra penetration, while the Warrior gives extra weapon damage. You want to choose one depending on your gear. You balance both out. For example, if you haven't farmed the arms of Relequen Set yet, and are using the Two-Fanged Serpent Set, you have a bit more penetration because of the set, so then you want to go for the Warrior Mundus. However, if you want to max out all your stats, the best way to do that is by getting Relequen, an infused weapon, and using the Lover Mundus. This is overall the best setup so far. I also want to mention that Khajiit may not be the best choice for this build. Dunmer and Orcs are the best race for this build, because the build has a low crit chance. Both Dunmer and Orcs have a higher weapon damage and higher stamina, which is more useful to have with this build. My personal advice would definitely be to go with an Orc, especially a fat one. Now let's get on with the DPS tests.
Execute can start. Nice and quick. Mm-hmm. Give me a couple of light attacks. You didn't even get time for the second bolt, did you? Well, that's gonna knock DPS down a tad as well. But that's a good sign, it means you're doing things faster overall. Alright, here we go then. That wasn't bad at all. Almost 61.
Ooh.
Yeah. Good build.
Nice.